Hey everybody, and welcome back to Autumn Leigh at Home. I'm Autumn Leigh. Today, I want to share with you some tips and tricks that I have learned over the years after living through a snowstorm and losing power for a few days, as well as Hurricane Helene. There are some tips and tricks that I learned that were so beneficial to my family and so simple that you may not have even thought of that could help your family out next time you need them. Let's get started. Number one, again, some of these are so simple, you're gonna ask yourself, why am I saying this? But let me tell you, in a moment of crisis, you don't think about these things until they're too late. Number one is have multiple ways to cook things. So what I mean is make sure that you have some charcoal that you can cook on a grill or a griddle and have the propane tank. You need the charcoal and the propane tank. So you wanna have those at your house, but have multiple ways that you can cook if the power were to go out. Number two are to practice those ways. Practice your cooking methods, because when Hurricane Helene came through, I cooked on the grill and it worked out just fine. I used my cast iron pizza pan and I was able to do grilled cheeses and cook some ravioli on the grill, and it worked out great. But the charcoal only lasts so long, and you need backup plans unless you have a huge supply of charcoal in your house to cook other items in a different way. One of those ways is we have a griddle with propane tanks. However, the problem is that I had never used it and my husband was unavailable to help me. So with that being said, I wasn't able to use it. I tried turning it on, I tried using it, but in the moment, you're already stressed out because you don't have power, everybody's hungry, you're trying to come up with ways to cook it. In the moment, it feels so much more stressful than it really is. And if you prepare and learn to cook those things ahead of time, if you've never used a grill before, practice using your grill. If you've never used a griddle before, practice using your griddle. Those are so simple things that you don't really think about until it's too late. And then once it's too late, you either don't have the supplies you need to cook when the power goes out, or you've never done it before and it's hard to do. And when you're already stressed out in that moment and the world around you is kind of in chaos, you don't want to have to think about that. It's one less thing that you have to think about. Number three is to have rechargeable devices. Things that you don't really think about that are so simple to find on Amazon and are so helpful in a crisis or an emergency situation. Things like a rechargeable lantern or a rechargeable fan that are solar powered. When I say rechargeable, I don't mean things that you plug into the wall to recharge them the night before. Try to find other ways of charging things. Rechargeable lanterns that are solar powered, that all you have to do is sit them outside. Those are so handy to have in that time because you don't have to worry about them charging. All you have to do is sit them outside, let them gather the sunlight, and then they're recharged for when the night comes, and you don't have to have batteries, you don't have to have electricity to charge them, none of the above. And they're so inexpensive that you would think that every house would have at least one of them. We now have two, thanks to a family member. We were able to get 2 rechargeable solar powered lanterns, and then they even surprised me. I didn't know this was a thing, but you could have solar powered fans. So keep them in your house, keep one in your house. Be prepared so that when you lose power, you already have those items. Number four goes along with number three. So number three was to have the rechargeable items that are solar powered. Number four is to have different ways to charge things. When we lost power the night before, I thankfully, thank the Lord, had plugged in all the things, just trying to be prepared, not realizing how bad it actually was gonna be. And I was so grateful for that. I had plugged in all of our laptops. I had plugged in all of our rechargeable containers that you can buy. There's like little battery powered containers that you can charge them, and all they do is literally charge your phone. I had plugged all of those in just to say, oh, well, I don't think we're gonna get anything, but we did. We got a really bad hurricane come through, and it was so beneficial. Not only were we able to watch a DVD on the laptop, but I also was able to use the laptops for recharging my phone. So if you don't have those rechargeable batteries or a solar powered item, but you have a laptop, plug it in. Always keep it charged. If you know that a storm is coming, regardless of how bad you think it's gonna be, go ahead and plug it in. We were told that this one was gonna be not great, it was gonna be a rough storm, but nowhere near did we realize that we were going to lose power for weeks, lose water, lose internet. I didn't have self-service for 4 days. So if there was an emergency, there was no way to call out because my phone was just a dead brick sitting on the counter. And on top of that, we didn't have 911. So you were on your own. These are items that were so beneficial and so nice to have just for luxury purposes. Obviously, food, water, and protection are the most important. But if you are prepared, then these are all things that take stress off of you in the emergency of the moment. You don't really think of how stressed you are until that moment happens. But when you are prepared and you have those things in place and you've practiced them, it's so much easier and you aren't near as stressed. One of the things I was so grateful for was the solar powered lantern, because not only was it solar powered for lighting up at night, it also was able to charge your phone. It had a little plug, a USB port that was able to plug up to phones and recharge your phone. So even if you didn't have power or your batteries were dead or everything else was dead, you could solar power that lantern every day and charge your phone with it. I will link it down below in the description if you're interested in it. I think it was 25, it might've been 30, but either way, in an emergency, not only is it giving you light, but it's also giving you a way to charge your phone. Number five is so simple, and I've already touched on it before. Plug all of the things in. If you know or think that a snowstorm's coming, there's tornado watches, tornado warnings, or hurricane is coming, plug all the things in. The iPad, the computer, the laptops, the phones, the rechargeable batteries, plug it all in, or even if you have a plug-in rechargeable fan, anything like that, plug it in. You will not be disappointed if you lose power. These are all things that I was so grateful that I had done the night before Hurricane Helene had come. I even told my husband the night before that I thought I was being over ridiculous and plugging all this in. Little did I know that the power and pretty much the entire grid for the upstate of South Carolina went down. And I was very grateful I had done all of those things, because that gave me longevity of my cell phone. Instead of it just being a dead brick on the counter because I had no power and no way to charge it, I was able to use my rechargeable battery, then I used my laptop, I used multiple different devices, and at that point I was able to have a rechargeable solar power lantern. All of those things, they were very beneficial when you don't have power. Now, did I have cell service? No, but I kept charging my phone in hopes that I would get it back anytime now. And any moment of any day, you're constantly looking at your phone saying, okay, is it working now? And hopeful that it will be working so that you could figure out what was going on in the outside world. Number six is to have a hand crank radio. I actually did have one of these because I keep a backpack, which I will go over that in just a minute, in my car for emergencies, and it has a hand crank radio in it. So even though I didn't have cell service, I didn't have internet, I didn't have TV, I didn't have computer, I didn't have any of that. I had no clue how bad this hurricane was until days later, after the hurricane had already hit, when I was actually able to pull up the news and see what had happened. I had no clue. But because I had the hand crank radio, I was able to get emergency alerts. I was able to know some of the basic stuff that was going on because it doesn't require power. All you do is crank it and it works. That's it. Most of them have a USB port now that you can also crank to charge your phone. So you crank it to give it that charge, and then it can charge your cell phone device or other things. You can look into that. Mine's one of the older versions. It doesn't charge cell phones because when I got it, iPhones weren't really a thing. So I've had it for a while, but it does have a flashlight on it as well as the hand crank radio for both of those, the flashlight and the radio. I would strongly recommend having something like that in case there is an emergency. You would be able to be filled in and understand and know what's going on in the outside world, because at the very least, even if your cell phones are down, you can get radio coverage. Number seven is to have extra water. And I don't mean only water bottles. I usually try to keep 1 pack of water bottles per person in my household at all times. And again, very thankful because during this hurricane, I am very grateful that we actually, where we live in our house, in our neighborhood, didn't have issues with water. We kept having water, but there was a large number of people in the upstate that had issues with their water. They were not able to drink it. They were boil advisory, all of the above, and all of the water in the entire grocery stores in the entire upstate pretty much were gone. Everybody was buying out the packs of water, but did I stress about it? No, because I already had it at my house. Now, other ideas that I would strongly recommend right before a storm is if you have a lot of Walmart sell like a 5-gallon blue tank that you can fill with water in the event of an emergency or in preparedness of an emergency, which I had done the night before. Again, thinking I was crazy and being overreactive, but grateful I did it because I didn't have to worry that my family had water or not. We had it. The other idea that a lot of people have used, and I have seen this used many times, I did not do this, though I did think about doing it, was filling empty mason jars. If you happen to have empty mason jars, fill them up with water. What's the harm? Worst case scenario, you might have to boil the water, but at least you'd have clean drinking water for the most part. It's not gonna hurt anything. If there's an emergency coming, you already have the container, go ahead and put water in it. It's not gonna hurt. I do have another idea for saving water that I will explain here in a minute because it's also used for a different idea that I will also explain here in a minute. But have the extra water. It's not gonna hurt anything. It's not expensive. And I usually rotate the water bottles through. I don't normally keep water for us to just drink on the daily basis. We use reusable water bottles on the daily basis. However, because I want to keep them fresh, I don't want the water bottles to be sitting there for 5 years or longer. I want them to constantly be in rotation. So I do occasionally let the kids grab water bottles, or we'll use them on picnics or things like that so that we can refresh those water bottles. But keep them at your house. It's not gonna hurt anything and you will appreciate it in an emergency. Number eight is so simple. It is to keep pre-made meals in your pantry. And when I say pre-made meals, I mean things like cans of ravioli, SpaghettiOs. I happen to have a huge can of chicken and dumplings that came in handy when the power went out. You don't want to have to think of how am I going to feed my family. When we lost power, the power went out for some of the people up here for over 2 weeks. And they had to find ways to feed their family for over 2 weeks on either a campfire or a griddle or a grill or different ways. And let me tell you, for the first week, you couldn't find propane, you couldn't find gas, you couldn't find charcoal, you couldn't find wood. It was near impossible because everybody had power out, including grocery stores and gas stations. So many of them weren't even open yet. And if you happened to find one that was open, the line was absolutely bonkers. For hours, you had to wait in line for gas. And on top of that, people were fighting for it. So to have to not stress about those things, have them at your house. Don't have to worry about it. Try to have a variety so you don't get sick of eating 20 cans of ravioli. Keep a variety at your house. And Patera with, I believe it's Appalachia Homestead, she had a great idea. When you go to the grocery store, don't try to buy all of it at one time because you'll make yourself panic with sticker shock and think, why am I doing this? Get 2 cans at a time. Go to the store, have a separate pantry that you keep stocked up foods just for an emergency that you have a way to feed your family. Get 2 cans every time you go to the grocery store. It may be about $3 if you do that. Try to come up with a variety of options. Think now when you're less stressed, because I can tell you when you're in the heat of the moment and everybody's without power, everybody can't find fuel, it's a lot more stressful than you think it is. So be prepared now so you don't have to stress about it later. In one of my recent Sam's Haul videos, I got a huge thing of ravioli. Again, we used that when the power went out. So I was very grateful that I had that among other many things, but that is why we do that, is to be prepared so we don't have to later. Number nine is to get empty containers like milk jugs, juice bottles, things like that, like apple juice containers, rinse them out, wash them out, fill them with water and stick them in your freezer. If you think I'm crazy, I thought I was at first too. And then I wasn't the one that actually did it for my family, but the same family member that was prepared with the lantern that was solar powered also did this for me while I was at work. She froze water or put water in jugs and stuck them in the freezer to become frozen. So you're going to have to kind of pre-do this, not do it the night before. I mean, you could if you think you have enough time for them to freeze, but I would strongly recommend this. You think it's a crazy thing to do. It accomplishes 2 things. The first one being that by having frozen water in clean containers in the freezer, it acts as freezers. So if your power goes out, it helps keep all of your items frozen because you're adding more ice in there and that food items are sitting on ice. And then number 2 reason is if you have issues with water, like many of the people in the upstate did, you have clean drinking water once it starts to melt. So it accomplishes 2 things. And that was something that when she did it, I didn't really think anything of it. But when we lost power, I was so grateful that she had done that. And I will start doing that in the future and keep that up because that was Such a simple thing that many people don't really think to do that was very beneficial. Number 10. Number 10 is to have a medical bin. I did this before the sickness that everybody knows which one I'm talking about that covered the world and whole world shut down. I did this before then, and I had all the PPE that I needed out of one bin. And on top of that, when Hurricane Helene hit, my husband had really bad poison ivy. I was able to treat it because I had all the main necessities in that one medical bin. You can put PPE in there, basic medical supplies like gauze, things to clean wounds, all the basic stuff that you think you would need in an emergency. One bin in the garage or in your attic or somewhere in your house in a closet. Keep that one bin and you will be prepared for all medical items or all medical needs in the event of an emergency. The next few are short and sweet, but so effective. Number 11 is to catch up on laundry. Make sure if you know a storm is coming, whether it's a snowstorm, flood, hurricane, tornado, whatever it may be, a big storm, make sure your laundry is caught up. Go ahead and do the laundry that you can, because once you lose power, it makes it a lot more difficult to be able to do laundry. Because not only were our laundry mats completely closed, they didn't have electricity, but you don't have electricity. So there was no way for anybody to do any laundry. Number 12, run your dishwasher. By running your dishwasher is one less stress that you have to worry about. If you were not to have water, your dishes would already be clean. Number 13 is to print off easy recipes for things that your family eats often, such as muffins, waffles, pancakes, sandwich bread. All of these things were so important when the power went out, because not only could you not go to the grocery stores, but you didn't have electricity. Once your electricity came back on, we didn't have cell service for days after the electricity came on. So I had no way to look up recipes, and nor was I about to try to go to a grocery store to buy bread or muffins or things like that. If you didn't already have them, you want to be able to have easy recipes that you can cook that are maybe like 4 ingredients. We cooked muffins. I cooked a loaf of bread almost every day, whether it was for myself or another family, because there were no loaves of bread for at least 2 weeks in the grocery store. It was so simple to be able to make our own rolls, our own bread. But when you don't have cell service or internet, there's no way to look up those recipes. I would strongly recommend either having a simple cookbook, not a fancy one, just a simple one, or print off very easy, simple recipes that you keep in your kitchen somewhere. Because I can tell you, when I didn't have self-service, but I did have power, that was something that I really wish I had done ahead of time, because I would have been able to cook those for my family. Thankfully, I was able to remember a few of them off the top of my head, but this is something that I would strongly recommend for other families. Number 14 is to have cash. All of the grocery stores in the area lost power as well, and they were out for days. When they finally did open back up, they were only letting a few people in the store at a time, and they were only taking cash. So one of the things that I would strongly recommend, if you know, just as you know, to be prepared, if you know a storm is coming, try to have a little bit of cash in your house available. That way, once the stores do finally open back up, if they're only taking cash for gas, food, whatever it may be, you will have some available. So keep that in your preparedness kit, so that you know that you will be prepared for when it happens. Number 15 is gonna sound kind of strange, but I would strongly recommend it, especially if you live in a hurricane-prone area. Put a cup of water in your freezer, let it freeze, and then stick a coin on top. That way, if you were to have to evacuate, you would know if you lost power and for how long, because what happens is the coin will start dropping down the cup the longer the power is out, and you will know that everything halfway unfroze, fully unfroze. You will know if the coin is all the way at the bottom by the time you come back, but the ice is frozen again. You may have lost power and then it came back on, but you will know that most of the food in there is probably no longer good. So it'll give you a good idea of how long you've lost power. Number 16 is to have an emergency backpack in your car at all times. This backpack comes in handy when you can keep food in it, snacks, a thermal blanket, flashlight, solar powered light, hand crank radio, all of those things. We had friends that were stranded on I-95 back in 2022. in Virginia that were stranded for almost 90 hours in a snowstorm. They ran out of food, they didn't have any water, they didn't have a way to use the restroom, and they were freezing cold and ran out of gas. So these are all things, and it wasn't just them, it was multiple other people. Many people were stranded that year in the snowstorm. You never know when something's gonna happen, but by having an emergency backpack that even has maybe a medical kit in it, a small medical kit, you are always prepared, and you know that in an emergency, you at the very least have food and water and medical equipment that can keep your mind at ease while you try to figure out your next step. Number 17. Number 17 is more of a tip for camping or for like our friends up in Western North Carolina. They have been squatting in the woods for the last 3 weeks or more because of Hurricane Helene. They don't have access to a working toilet. So what we did was I ended up taking them a 5-gallon bucket that I happened to have here with the pool noodle and cut the pool noodle to the shape of the bucket and sliced halfway through the pool noodle to put it around the top. That gave them an option for a toilet. Now that's obviously a rare situation, but it doesn't hurt to have a 5-gallon bucket regardless of what it's for, to have handy around here at the house. So that's just an extra tip and trick that you could even use camping if you wanted to. Number 18. Number 18 is a very simple one, and it may not apply to everybody, but if you or one of your loved ones that lives in your house are on oxygen, two things. One is always make sure you have an emergency oxygen tank available. We had many people that sadly, unfortunately, in our area, as well as some of the other states that were hit by the hurricane, that lost power for weeks and even for the first few days, that unfortunately lost their life because of not having oxygen. And I hate to see that happen. That is such a sad thing. If you know of anybody that is in your household that's on oxygen, make sure you always have that backup oxygen tank. And if you don't have that available, you need to make sure you call and get one available if at all possible. One of the other things that you can do that go ahead and prevent in a preventative mindset or prepared mindset is by calling your electrical company and letting them know that you have a loved one in the household that is on oxygen, and they will put you on a special list that when they start trying to get power back, they will put you at the top of the list to be one of the first ones to get that power back. That way they are aware that somebody in your house has oxygen, and they will do everything that they can to try to get that power back faster for you compared to others that may not need it as fast. Number 19 is pick up your prescriptions. If you know a hurricane is coming, you want to go ahead and make sure you get those prescriptions, because you never know if that pharmacy is going to lose power for days and you become unavailable. That is what happened to us. Now, little did we know that we would get a hurricane in the upstate of South Carolina, but that happened and we lost the pharmacy for days because they didn't have any power or internet, just like the rest of us. So if you know you have prescriptions, go ahead and pick them up. Last but not least is do not let your car get below half a tank of gas. If you know storms are coming, you want to be prepared, and this is just a general great mindset to have, and it's good for your car. Don't let your car get below half a tank of gas, because if we lose power in our area, there were insanely long lines. You had to sit in line for hours, even up to about a week after the hurricane hit to get gas, because people are trying to get it for their generators, their cars, all of the things. And if you don't want to have to stress about that or worry about it, and you want to be able to stay home or just be prepared so that you have a tank of gas in the event of an emergency, always keep it at least half a tank. And then you know that you're able to get somewhere if need be, if there was an emergency, and you don't have to wait in those lines, because a lot of times there were also fights that broke out in those lines, and I don't want to be in the middle of all of that. So keep your car at least half a tank of gas. And if you know a storm is coming, go ahead and fill up beforehand. That way you don't have to worry about it. I just want to take this time to say thank you so much for joining me here today at Autumn Leigh at Home. These are all tips and tricks that were very beneficial to my family when a snowstorm hit and we lost power for a few days, as well as this Hurricane Helene that came through. They all were super beneficial. These are things that I've learned over time, and I hope that they help your family as much as they did mine. Please like, subscribe, and share down below, and I hope to see you guys next time.